Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of The Drop. Greg Wyshynski and Arda Öcal are here, and the Florida Panthers once again on the precipice of immortality as they defeat the Edmonton Oilers in game number 5. An emphatic statement made. The series will now shift back to Sunrise, and they definitely did not eat overtime to win this game, and they definitely commandeered the first period once again. Wish, your top line thoughts?
My top line thoughts is that the Edmonton Oilers didn't score a goal in the first 47 minutes of the game. I think this was domination. I did not think of the two teams that flew back from Fort Lauderdale to Edmonton after game 4 that it would be the Oilers who didn't have their legs, but they got skated out of the building, forechecked out of the building. Part of that is what the Panthers do to you when they pounce on you early, which is to suck the life force out of you. A 2-0 lead again in the first period for the Panthers. And you could start to see the Oilers, one, standing around, which is something that you can't do against this Florida team. And two, get a little tentative. I mean, they had a power play, Arda, early in this game that had to be one of the single worst power plays I've ever seen Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid take part in. They didn't even get a chance to set up in the zone. Like, they were completely neutered on special teams tonight. This was a statement win for the Florida Panthers that when they play their game, they are the better team in this series. And I'll give you a number here. I crunched the numbers. I'm not good at math, but I'm good at some math. Time spent leading in this series, Arda?
Yes.
The Florida Panthers have led for 200 minutes and 25 seconds, and the Edmonton Oilers have led for 33 minutes and 51 seconds. Like, it's not really been close, man. Like, I know that we're 3-2. We're going back to Sunrise. The Oilers have every chance to extend this series to Game 7 again. But if you look at the numbers, if you watch these games, if you think about the current state of goaltending, which we'll get to on the drop in a few minutes, like it's a steeper hill than you might realize for the Oilers in this series.
Panthers are the third team since shots were tracked in 1959 in the National Hockey League to score 5 goals on less than 20 shots in a Stanley Cup Final game. Let's show the highlight, then let's break it down.
Before we get to the highlights,
before
we get to the highlights, 2 things I want to ask you. First of all, does this give you a little bit of the old school Devils flavor like it gives me? Like, this kind of reminds me of the Trap years, in particular the 2000 team for the Devils that was able to really play suffocating shot suppression defense, but also had a menagerie of great offensive players that could hurt you. Does this kind of remind you of one of those teams?
Yes, insofar as you would say, McDavid and Draisaitl were certainly trapped in a box in this game. Yes, absolutely.
And the other thing is that I forgot to add this to my statement before. Like, isn't this just indicative, this game 5, that when the Panthers don't allow the Oilers back into these games, they're just going to win? I mean, they had the first 2 blown leads after 2 periods that they've had under Paul Maurice in the last 3 postseasons in this series. They had 2 games where you could clearly see the Florida Panthers taking their foot off the pedal and allowing Edmonton to find their game and get back into it. For all the Corey Perry speechifying in game 4, it was the Panthers resting on their laurels that allowed the Oilers to get back into that game. Tonight, they did not. Tonight, they stayed on it the entire time. And I think what I was trying to say before, Arda, is that when Florida decides to do that, when they don't creak the door open, there's no way the Oilers are going to be able to walk through.
And Corey Perry, I guess, did not have a speech after the first period.
He already used it. Could you imagine being in the Oilers locker room? Yeah, where they're looking, everybody slowly turns their head to Corey Perry after the first period, and he's like, I got nothing, boys.
I already said, someone else step up. Yeah, exactly. I already said my piece last game. Someone else step up. Here is why they needed said speech after the first period. Sergei Bobrovsky and the Florida Panthers taking on Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. And once again, the Florida Panthers take a multi-goal lead in the first period. This will be the 3rd straight game. Just under 11 minutes to go. Guess who? Brad Marchand creates space and beats Calvin Pickard, who started for the Oilers, his 9th goal in the postseason. He grabs the puck off the faceoff. He beats Matthias Ekholm, and then he goes high on Pickard. Later in the first, it's his Brad Marchand's fellow Conn Smythe favorite, Sam Bennett, gets a huge rebound and beats Pickard for his 15th this postseason. The vast majority of those, I think it's 13 or 14, have been on the road, which is an NHL record for a single postseason. So the Panthers led 2-0. In the third, they would add to it. Am I watching Brad Marchand or am I watching Mario Lemieux against the North Stars? Are you kidding me with that goal, his second of the game? Look at that dangle over Jake Wallman and then through the legs of Calvin Pickard. That is a SportsCenter top 10 number 1. And then in the third period, finally, the Oilers have life. And guess who? Connor McDavid scoring his first goal of the series. He gets back up from the ice and he scores, beating Sergei Bobrovsky. That was short-lived because a short time later, Sasha Barkov, Sam Reinhart finds the back of the net and reestablishes the 3-goal lead. Sasha Barkov, Greg Wyshynski mentioned an even strength point for Sasha Barkov on ESPN Australia, and he got one as the Panthers win by a final score of 5-2. And here we are, Wish. Like you said, another emphatic victory. They took control of the first period. The Oilers could not find their chances. Poor power play. McDavid and Draisaitl largely chanceless. They looked lost in many points of this game. So let's talk about, like, in particular, how did you see the Panthers being able to commandeer even the second period and not let the Oilers back into this game?
It's their forecheck to start with. I mean, they were rolling 4 lines that were all playing like wrecking balls. It's their neutral zone ability. I mean, the one of the goals was, I think it was the Bennett goal, was started with a great play in the neutral zone by Evan Rodriguez. We saw Marchand make a good play in the neutral zone to get the puck for his first goal. So they're rolling in the offensive zone like a bunch of wrecking balls. They're playing really well with their sticks in the neutral zone. And then when you go into the defensive zone for the Florida Panthers, they're just playing really smart. Their breakouts were good. They were blocking a ton of shots. Sergei Bobrovsky said that on some of these penalty kills, it was the most block shots he's ever seen in front of him. And then, oh, by the way, Bob was great. Like, again, one of the more interesting lines of thinking in this series from Paul Maurice, who obviously has his fair share of interesting lines of thinking, is the idea that most of the goaltending in a lot of these games has been quite good, even if the stats don't show it. I think this is another example from Bob tonight, where he gives up the 2 goals. Obviously, one of them was with the Edmonton net empty, and he didn't face a ton of shots, but when they needed him, he was there in a huge way. And in fact, Maurice said the inflection point for this game was the way that Bobrovsky played in the first 10 minutes, not allowing anything from Edmonton and allowing the Panthers to grab the lead once again in the first period. So, I mean, it's tough to beat a team who's great in every zone, and the Panthers were great in every zone tonight.
Shots were 21-19. So Calvin Pickard lets in 5 goals and 19 shots. Chris Knobloch said those goals, he says those goals necessarily weren't Calvin Pickard's fault. He didn't think he played a horrible game. But this begs the question. I know this is going to be the $1 million question, especially on the minds of Oilers fans. Who starts Game 6 for Edmonton?
So you're saying it begs the question whether to run it back with the 33-year-old journeyman who's on his 6th team in 10 years, and whether or not you should entrust the entirety of the Stanley Cup Final to him? Is that the question that we're having? Look,
that's what I'm asking. Yes.
If Chris Knobloch is saying that these goals are not on Calvin Pickard, then you could say the same thing about what Stuart Skinner did in the first period of Game 4, and he got chased and he lost his job. Like, they were marauding him too. And yeah, there's a couple of quibbles you could have with Skinner, just like there's a couple of quibbles you can have with Pickard. Like the first goal, the goal that Bennett scored, where Pickard is all the way over to his right trying to defend a shot that's blocked, and then he's out of position to try to stop Bennett's goal, or Bennett's shot rather, on the rebound. I think that's on him. I mean, you could make the argument at least maybe one of those Marchand goals he probably should stop. I don't think here's the thing about Pickard. I don't know if we talked about this last time. The traditional stats tell you he played well in game 4, and the analytics tell you he played better than average in game 4. The eye test for me was that he was leaving rebounds, that he wasn't exactly like stealing goals away from the Panthers in that game. I mean, he had the one really good save on Bennett in overtime where he got helped by the crossbar. And so maybe you'll say this is hindsight on my part or whatever, but I mean, to me, they're changing goalies to change momentum. And I don't know if that's always the smartest decision to make, because I don't think that Calvin Pickard can win this series for them. But I think that Stuart Skinner's ceiling, as we saw last season, is potentially winning the series for them. What do they do in game 6? I don't know how you run it back with Stu. You basically said in a Pete DeBoer, Jake Ottinger way that you don't have faith that he's going to win in this series. You probably have to run it back with Pickard, and I don't think that necessarily he gives you the best chance to win the next game.
I would have said Stuart Skinner starts game 6. If not for Chris Knobloch saying, I don't think those goals were Calvin Pickard's fault. That sounds to me like a coach that is protecting the goaltender he wants to put in game 6.
I don't know how you go back to him. Like, how do you go back to
him? I agree.
How do you go back to a guy who got pulled twice on the road already? Like, I mean, I'm not trying to absolve Stuart Skinner of his goaltending sins in this series. I just think that, like, if Knobloch's argument is that you let Pickard off the hook because the goals aren't quote unquote his fault because of how well the Panthers are playing, well, damn it. Like, Skinner faced 17 shots in the first period of game 4. Like, it wasn't his fault necessarily either. So I guess the sum total of the argument here, Arda, is that the Panthers are really good and they don't have a goaltender that's going to really solve all the problems in front of them.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting decision once we hear it. Last question before we move on to winners and losers. Is this over in 6? Have you seen enough from the Panthers, especially their 2 big victories, that you're confident that they win the Stanley Cup in game 6?
Of course I'm confident because I picked them in 6, silly. So if they win in 6, then I look very, very smart. And that is always the most important thing when it comes to these predictions. I would rather talk right now to you about a little gentleman by the name of Brad Marchand. The little ball of hate, nose face killer. We didn't really talk about him yet, and he is easily the most
really. We've talked about him a lot throughout the series. He's been.
No, I mean on this episode.
This episode. Okay,
right
sorry.
now.
Yes,
You
where he scored 2 goals, and we probably should talk to him.
Really, we really haven't talked about him in depth because he made NHL history tonight, Arda. He became the first player in NHL history to score 5 goals in the Stanley Cup Final with 2 separate franchises. He scored 5 goals in 7 games against the Vancouver Canucks in 2011 for the Boston Bruins. He has 6 goals in 5 games against the Edmonton Oilers in this series. Brad Marchand was asked tonight, what would 2011 Brad Marchand say to 2025 Brad Marchand, who is doing this at 37 years old? And he said, quote, he would say, man, that guy is good looking.
Yeah. To which Sam Reinhart laughed.
But I'm sure he did. Why not? So here's the rest of the story. So Marchand, 10 goals, 10 assists, and 22 playoff games for the Panthers. He is the 7th player in NHL history to have 5 or more goals in multiple Stanley Cup Finals. The first since Mario Lemieux in 1991 and 92. Man, that's when hockey was hockey, baby. Those Penguin teams were so much fun. His 6 goals are the most in the Stanley Cup Final for any player 35 years old or over. His 6 goals are also the most by any player of any age in the Stanley Cup Final since Esa Tikkanen with the Oilers in 1988. And his 5 goals on the road, Arda, here's your stat of the night. His 5 goals on the road are the most in a Stanley Cup Final since Jack Adams of the Vancouver Millionaires scored 6 in 1922, over 100 years ago, Arda. What Marchand's doing is insane. Like, we all knew that he'd have an impact on this team when they acquired him at the trade deadline, but none of us thought that it was going to be an impact to this extent where all of a sudden, Arda, while Sam Bennett is the clear favorite for the Conn Smythe, if the Panthers do close out this series in 6, He's at minus money right now, and you can't deny 15 goals in the playoffs. That is an enormous total. Marchand has re-entered the chat. He's found his lane. There is going to be a lot of sentiment for this guy having been the most important player, arguably, in this playoff. And I'll tell you why. He has points in every game the Panthers have played after a loss. Like, he is, including 2 games that he won in overtime after they lost. So not only has he been a driving force, not only is he a big reason they're doing what they're doing on the road, tying the NHL record for most road wins in a single playoff, he's also been kind of their safety net after they've stumbled. So there's a real MVP case for him. Who do you go with, Bennett or Marchand at this point?
If Bennett scores 2 or more goals in Game 6 and the Panthers win, it's Sam Bennett. If Sam Bennett scores 0 goals and Marchand gets 1 or more, to me, I'm going to go back to a term you use, the eye test. The eye test tells me that Brad Marchand is the Conn Smythe winner. I think he's had more big moments. I think that he's had more impact, and he's got the narrative working for him as well. So to me, my sentimental favorite among the Panthers players is Brad Marchand. But I agree with what we talked about last shows. We're going to get to winners and losers next here. I think it's not going to be a situation where it's like, oh, the losing team is going to have the Conn Smythe winner. We have too many players with quality postseason runs that it will be someone from the winning team. So that's how I feel about it. Let's get to winners and losers. And a big reason the Florida Panthers won this game as well, and the last 3 games, quite frankly, is the fact that they have been dominant in the first period. They are now 7-0 in first periods in the last 3 games, 2-0 after the first 3 games ago in Game 3. In Game 4, they were up 3-0, and then in Game 5, up 2-0 again. No shots on goal for the Oilers in the final 11 minutes and 10 seconds of the first frame, and only 1 shot on goal from an Oilers forward in the first period. So yeah, they come out hot, even at whether it's a loss or a win. The previous game, and the Florida Panthers just keep dominating that first 20 minutes of play.
Loser for me, changing allegiances. You may have seen this on television before. After Brad Marchand scored to make the goal 3-0, take a look at this fan in the crowd taking off his Oilers jersey to not only reveal a Panthers jersey, but reveal a Matthew Tkachuk jersey in Canada. I guess he was prepared for either of these teams to win so he can be prideful. But I got to tell you, man, I've seen a lot of jersey fouls. I've seen a lot of moments of weird fan jersey moments. I have never seen anyone changing sweaters in the middle of a game when it looks like one team has an insurmountable lead. I don't know about you.
That was brutal. All he needed were the bushes to complete the Homer Simpson meme. That's what he needed. He needed like just bushes behind him. Winner, Oilers.
I wish I could find that guy. I had so many questions. I wish I could find that guy, but it was late in the game. I don't know if I could pick him out of the crowd. I will say, though, about Panthers fans, there were definitely more Panthers fans here at Game 5 than there had been in Games 1 and 2, including a couple. Shout out to the couple of Panthers fans who said hi to me, who were parading around the concourse with Matthew Tkachuk championship belts wrapped around their waists. So there you go. I mean, what can you say? There's a Panther pride thing happening.
One of them was the guy we just saw who changed his jersey. He happened to have a championship belt with him. Winner, Oilers fan art. The Edmonton fans get very artistic in trolling the Florida Panthers. We have a Matthew Tkachuk as a turtle, and then his collection of signs from Game 5, a reference to Aaron Ekblad's PD suspension, Evan Rodriguez grinning while being booed, Brad Marchand as a rat, Matthew Tkachuk as a turtle, it was prohibited. And then, the fans came out, and they came out in full creative force. And apparently you got jump scared by the mascot. Look at you.
Scary mascot. This guy had a Calvin Pickard jersey with I thought was really interesting. He said he roots for the underdog, but then someone noted, he told me that he had this jersey last season, but it's a Fanatics jersey. So I think he might have been lying. But still, it's always interesting to
like
see
Alex.
like a backup goalie jersey on somebody. It's too bad he couldn't come through for the dude. Loser tonight, speaking of goalies, would be goalie goals. Oh, what a heartbreaker, man. 4-2 Panthers. Puck goes into the zone. Bobrovsky, I swear to God, he's looking at it. He's looking at it for a second, then continues to play the puck. I asked Bob about this after the game. It was the first question I got a chance to ask him. Were you thinking potentially to shoot at the empty net and make unbelievable Stanley Cup Final history by scoring a goalie goal? But he said, no, I didn't even think about it. I like to keep it simple. I don't think it's in keeping with the Panthers ethos to take a chance like that. God forbid, Corey Perry knocks it down and immediately scores or something in that moment. But I gotta think it was just there for a moment, like the gleam in his eyes as he looks down the ice, and they have a 2-goal lead. But he kind of played it really safe on that play. So the loser is goalie goals. Again, cowardice from Bobrovsky in that moment, because he could have done something that we've all been waiting to see in the Stanley Cup Final.
There was 1 minute and 58 seconds on the clock. If it was 34 seconds and the exact same situation happened, I think he's shooting. I'm with you. I agree. I think it's just a product of having it come too early. With 2 minutes left, 2 goals up. He was playing it safe. It's Cup Final. But 34 seconds, 27 seconds, same situation. Without a shadow of a doubt, he's going for it. That's how I'm feeling.
Without question.
All right, that's going to do it here for winners and losers. Here's how we are going to end the show, Greg Wyshynski. We also noticed on social media that you were having a pretty bad morning. Let's show the picture. Here's Connor McDavid, and here you are, really sad.
Yeah.
It was a rough morning for travel.
Yeah, that's the look of a man who rolled into Edmonton at 2 a.m. and walked to the rink in a cold rain shower because I don't own an umbrella or a jacket with a hood. And I was saying to you before we started recording, man, like this was the first day of the last couple months of covering the playoffs that I was just like a little drained. Like I needed a cup, maybe a Celsius and a few cups of coffee to get going. I was just like, was not feeling it this morning. And while I thought I was looking inquisitive, while listening to Connor McDavid pontificate on these answers he gave us, I realized that it was sort of a Belichickian surliness in my face, probably having to do with the exhaustion I was feeling at this point.
Well, hopefully this cheers you up. We also noticed, Wish, so we decided to put you all around the world.
Thank you.
Show you a couple of things that we have prepared. Here's you finally getting your interview with Margot Robbie.
I think yes, right on her shoulder. I'm sticking my my microphone to her. I'm like, what is it like to be Barbie? Is the question I've asked her in this instance.
Yep. Justin, roll the next one. Here's your new Twitter profile picture.
Oh my God! It's me, Joel, and the bots from Mystery Science Theater 3000, asking Joel how much he likes the movie Pod People, and he says it stinks into my recorder.
Here's the next one. You're in the cage with Joe Rogan interviewing Conor McGregor after he loses. You got great access, dude. Great access.
There's certain political parties that are constantly looking for who might be the next Joe Rogan. Clearly, it could be me. Here is me. Yeeting.
No yeet. No yeet.
No yeet. No yeet.
No
honorary Uso. Honorary Oos. Greg Wyshynski.
Yep. That's you. This is my favorite one. You're just off to the side. We can barely see you, actually. Your face is cut off due to the border, which is even more appropriate because you're just waiting sadly to talk to Team Canada.
I was really enjoying this bit until we got to the inserting sad Greg Wyshynski into the Canadian Four Nations face-off celebration. Not a fan of that one. I think that's probably how I looked after they scored in overtime.
Here
you
are
on the moon.
Yep. But you're the first to ask if the moon landing was a hoax. So good for you, journalistic integrity.
That's right. And obviously, I don't need a space helmet because I'm in that warehouse somewhere in Nevada where they filmed the moon landing. So
correct. We got a couple more for you. Here you are about to ask Admiral Mahdi if he still has a disturbing lack of faith.
Just trying to stay out of the way of Vader on this one. Tarkin's looking at me like, why is this guy recording the Force choke?
You and Tarkin have the same expression. That's perfect. And lastly, here you are. You got the scoop on Han's death. You're just waiting.
Kylo, talk about killing your father on a bridge with your lightsaber. That'd be my first question. Everybody likes a good talk about question. And I would have hit him with that one, obviously.
If anyone on social media has any place in the world they would like to put sad wish, we will happily share. I know I will, because this is my new favorite game. Shout out to Justin Cloutier.
I was really surprised at the reaction to that photo online. I did not think that anyone would care if I was wet and miserable, but it turns out that a lot of people like when I'm wet and miserable, which
Correct.
I think speaks to my online persona more than anything else.
We are all thrilled when you are mildly inconvenienced. That's what it comes down to. Wish.
No kidding. By the way, I asked McDavid. I asked McDavid about meeting Yager. I think we talked about that the other night. Like how incredible it was to witness two presidents come off of Mount Rushmore and like speak in front of me. He said he met him on multiple occasions, and he said that like he just loves him as a player. So that was pretty dope. Like,
fair enough.
I would love to have been a fly on the wall there.
Well, there's the picture there. It was probably a really fun conversation. Legends all around. And that about does it for us here on The Drop. We will be back here on the NHL and ESPN YouTube channel following Game 6. Either we're going to be breaking down a Stanley Cup Championship victory or a march to Game 7. And wish the travel doesn't end. Back you go to Sunrise. Safe travels.
Yeah, tomorrow's a travel day. Both coaches are doing Zoom interviews in the morning, so you know it's a travel day. And then it's the Sunrise. Now, famously, I did not book any travel for Game 7. I rectified that this morning because I do think there's a chance this could go 7. The Panthers, I mean, I'm saying Panthers in 6, but let's not like forget they have a real problem closing out teams. The Leafs in the second round, the Hurricanes won an elimination game, and oh, by the way, the Oilers won 3 elimination games last Stanley Cup Final. So I did book some Game 7 travel, and let me tell you, Arda, there are multiple stops on my flight back to Edmonton because there are no flights available leaving Fort Lauderdale if this thing goes 7. So either another travel adventure or the end of our journey in Game 6, Mr. Öcal.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Let's all be sad wish.